Hey y'all, my name is Shannon Ray. How y'all doing? Y'all all right? Did you miss me? Probably not. I was here last week, so guess who's back? Back again. That sounds like it should be a wrap. I have not. For those of you who have been with me for a while, I have not forgotten about the rap. It will be back. Maybe next video, it will be back. It kind of slipped my mind for just a second, 2.2. Oh, but we're back because I just felt bars in my spirit. Guess who's back? Shouldn't have left. Okay. Bring in the back. No, I'll be back. Don't you worry about it. It's gonna be good. For those of you who are new here, I offer you the most sincere salutations. We're all friends here. Oh yes, walking this life thing out together. We gather each week to discuss lessons in life, lessons in love, and the pursuit of purpose. So if you're into that sort of thing, positivity, upliftment, community, opportunity to express yourself amongst peers, I would highly suggest you hit that like and subscribe button. Subscribe right here. Go on and do it. You won't regret it. It's a community, baby. And if you're not into that sort of thing, well, I'll pray for you. No judgment. I forgot to mention my mug. Do you see my mug? Oh man. Oh yes. I was feeling festive knowing that this was gonna come out on Valentine's Day. Are you a Valentine's Day person? I've been wondering if I was. I was trying to look at it from all perspectives, how I've perceived it, single, married-ish, in a relationship-ish, whatever I might have been. Do I care about Valentine's Day? No. But do I hate those who care about Valentine's Day? Again, no. If you want to celebrate, I think you should celebrate. But for your girl, do not bring me chocolate. But feel free to drop off some tacos. Soft shell. Absolutely. I'm serious though. Tacos, Skittles, maybe a little head rub. That's love. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Moving on. I was listening to this podcast featuring Anthony O'Neill, and he had on my girl, one of my favorite pastors, Sarah Jakes Roberts. For those of you who don't know Anthony O'Neill, or maybe even Sarah Jakes Roberts, I would highly encourage you to look them both up, but I'll give you a short synopsis. I was introduced to Anthony O'Neill through Dave Ramsey. I used to listen to his podcast when I was looking at opportunities on how to get rid of some of that student loan debt. Some of it I found really worked for me, some of it didn't fit my lifestyle, so I've been continuously trying to kind of take from all of these folks who have some type of knowledge in finances. Finances is a place that I believe that the Lord is going to bless me abundantly, and so I want to do all I can to prepare for those blessings. That's a word. Pick up on it. But Anthony O'Neill is a young man who used to be homeless, and he's done all these different things to get himself into financial freedom. That is something that's really important to me. I do plan on picking up his book. However, there have been some things that he has posted and or said in relation to relationships between a man and a woman, marriage, that sort of thing, that have rubbed up against me. I am in a place where I'm trying to actively listen to people who don't always 100% agree with me, just to open my mind to other experiences and learn more about things that I don't necessarily know. So I was really interested in the podcast hosting Sarah Jakes Roberts because a lot of the ideals and things that she speaks about from a Christian perspective, from a biblical perspective, and then from just her life experiences are very interesting to me. While our Christian walks aren't all that similar, I find such a connection in what she's talking about. What she says about God and what he's saying to her in these seasons often feels like confirmation for me. So check them both out. Sarah Jakes Roberts with Women Evolve. Anthony O'Neill, he talks about building legacy, building wealth, and all of those different things. So I'm listening to the podcast and something really interesting comes up. Sarah Jakes Roberts is there to highlight her book, and she's talking about the importance of goals and how goals in the short term impact the long term, which impact your overall legacy. The goals that you set right now could change the trajectory of the generations to come after you, and how important legacy is, how important it is to contribute to that, and how important it is to work on them in the now. What was interesting about this was Anthony O'Neill's reaction, and I don't think his reaction is strange. I think there are a lot of people who agree and feel that way. I know for a fact I actually used to think that way myself. So Pastor Sarah is talking about how important goals are and how even as women, we need to be going out and setting these goals reaching these milestones, setting these landmarks for ourselves so that we're able to build. Generations to come are able to enjoy the fruit of the seeds that we sow today. Anthony looked a little bit thrown off, dismayed, and so much so that he asked her, and I don't think even in like a jerky sort of way, I think he was genuinely talking about the standpoint that a lot of people have. He asked her to reiterate what she was saying because to him it sounded like Sarah Jakes Roberts was telling women to go out and build legacy without waiting for a man. Anthony O'Neill talks about being a traditional man and how that is the reason why he, as a man, sees the standpoint of men wanting to make their names great, build their legacy, provide for their family, and the traditional role that has always been there. I totally get it. I totally understand. As someone who believes in the Bible and believes in the order of things, totally get what he's saying. But I think that I would challenge him, and Sarah Jakes Roberts did as well, I would challenge us all to think about what that actually looks like in real time, in real life, in this modern world, and how that applies. You have to expand your vision. There is always going to be room for the right partner if that is what God has for your life, but it absolutely does not mean he is waiting for you to hit go on what he has called you to do because he hasn't yet brought your partner in. So for today's video, I want to talk with you about my no more waiting season. When I think about what I've been waiting for, because I've been waiting for a mate, waiting for some sort of validation, it really reminds me about the promise of God in all of our lives. We see example after example after example of God determining identity before we even walk into whatever that identity is. Joseph, this interesting figure in the Bible, in the book of Genesis, Joseph is given a dream, two dreams, where God reveals the plan for his life. God tells him where he's gonna be. He doesn't talk to him about the journey. He doesn't tell him how long it's gonna take, but we see Joseph very early on in his teenage years learn what his actual identity in Christ is. What happens to Joseph during all of that time, from receiving the word to actually living in the promise, is a season of more than just waiting. Is a season of working, it's a season of growing, it's a season of lessons. Joseph, because of his immaturity, shares his dream a little too soon, a little too early, with a group that's supposed to love him and protect him, his brothers, yet their jealousy causes them to sell him into slavery. In slavery, Joseph decides to work, to do what he's supposed to do, and he gets promoted to a place in Potiphar's house. Potiphar's wife can't keep her hands to herself. Joseph ends up going to jail because of a lie. In that time in jail, Joseph uses his gifts, his God-given gifts through dreams, to interpret the Pharaoh's dreams and all that is to come. He saves Egypt because of these interpretations. He rises to become the second in command of all of Egypt. He was told that he would be that in his teenage years. In those 13 years, Joseph wasn't just waiting for his chance to become great. Joseph was learning, Joseph was growing, Joseph was surviving, Joseph was using his gifts and talents, Joseph was leaning into what God had placed into him. And eventually, he saved not only all of Egypt from a famine, but that very family who sold him into slavery because of their jealousy, because of their lack of understanding, and fulfilled the true identity that he had in Christ. I am a believer in the power of marriage. I am a believer in the power of a union. I believe that we are stronger together. We have the capabilities to do more together when it's right, when it's God, when we're together in purpose and on purpose. But I don't believe that God would ever tie our identities to anyone but God. I don't believe he would tie them to another person. I don't believe he would tie them to another thing, to a job, to a brand, because when we have our identities wrapped up into things or people, we are at risk. People change, seasons change, finances change, brand power changes, life changes, things change. But God does not. And when we put our trust, our identity, our focus into all of those things, the brand, the business, the books, the husband, the wife, we run the risk of making those things our God. We run the risk of making those things our idol. And when we do that, we are damaging ourselves, because those things are not things that will always be the same, that will always be constant. Things have ebbs and flows. People have ups and downs. Relationships have hardships. Things come up against all of those things that you've tied your identity to. When they're shaking, if you haven't anchored yourself into something stronger, if you haven't anchored yourself into someone who will literally never change, who will never leave you, then you are at risk of completely losing yourself every time the wind blows. Anchoring yourself to God is anchoring yourself to the truth of who you are and the truth of whose you are. I think it's Ephesians 4:14 that says we will no longer be children tossed about to and fro by the winds. We have got to anchor ourselves to God. That is the only way to stay true, 10 toes down into who we actually are. Our identity is not tied to anything or anyone else. Those are false idols. The waiting season. There are things that you're going to have to wait for, but waiting does not mean that you are not working. It does not mean that there is nothing that's happening. And waiting for someone else, waiting for something to happen. Wait for yourself to make a certain amount of money before you decide to go for this dream. To wait until you have a partner before you decide to launch this business or launch this thing is delaying your desires. There are some things you can't control. If you want to be a mother, yeah, you're probably gonna have to wait for a partner or wait for a situation that happens. I know some people decide to go into parenthood on their own, so to speak. They find a donor, they make a decision. But if you're someone who wants to have a more traditional family, you are gonna have to wait for your partner. But what you can be doing in that time, instead of focusing on the partner who isn't there, you can focus on the person who is. Don't delay your desires, because when you delay your desires, you are denying yourself. And when you deny yourself, you run the risk of making decisions based on the lack of fulfillment that you have because you've delayed your desires. You've denied yourself everywhere else. Choosing out of desperation because you've been waiting and focusing on the lack means that that lack grows, at least in your mind. That lack spills over into so many things. You might hate your job, right? You're having some trouble, you're having some issues at work. But if you focus on all the things that you don't like, if you focus on all the things that you don't have, that will grow. And when the first job comes along and it feels like an opportunity to leave the place that you didn't want, you don't do your due diligence of finding out if this is the right work culture for you, if this is the right type of boss for you, if this is the right type of team, if this is a company you can see actual growth with. Those things matter, but you're so busy running from the place that you don't want to be and focused on where you want to go that you're not taking the time to qualify where you're headed. That happens in relationships. You want this partner, you're waiting for this person, so maybe you don't buy the house, maybe you don't move, maybe you don't go to a new city because you're so focused on wanting to have someone to do it with first that you deny your desires. So when that first person that comes along that looks like they're gonna fill that void for you, you choose them and you don't qualify the life that you two will have together. Move now. If God has told you to go, what exactly are you waiting for? Go now. If you want to start a business, but you don't feel like you have someone to have your back or the properties or the proper securities, that is where you have a faith challenge. That's a faith deficit, not a person deficit. You don't need anyone but God. When God has made the promise, He will bring you everything you need. He's not going to send you out somewhere without providence. Take the time to qualify your desires. If God has put it in your heart to do it and do it now, then move. Because delaying your desires, denying yourself is going to put you in a place of desperation so that you make the wrong choices when you see the enemy tempt you with things that look almost right. He was almost perfect. This job was almost everything I wanted to be. This house was nice, but not what I actually wanted. Move when God says move. Do what God says to do, and don't wait on the validation or the person that you think needs to come. God has already said yes. That is the only yes you need, other than yours. When you wait for that person, that thing, that confirmation, sometimes what we're actually doing is confusing fear with covering. We say, oh, this could happen, that can happen. And we look at all the different scenarios. We ask God for confirmation after confirmation after confirmation, because if we make this move and start this business, maybe my family will struggle. They might not eat if we make this move and I'm out here living in a new city by myself. Maybe I will be lonely. Maybe I will miss my friends too much. If we make this move and we risk losing this relationship or we risk losing this friendship, where will I be? That's fear talking. That's not God talking. A lot of the times of the choices that we don't make is because we are confusing fear with actual covering. We hear a lot of times, oh, rejection is God's protection. Perhaps. Sometimes rejection is God moving us into a new direction. Sometimes rejection or failure is God trying to teach us so that we can be better next time, so that we can help someone else along the way, so that we are able to get all we need to get before we move to that next level. But if we don't move, we'll never be able to step into the fullness of the identity that God has given us. Your fear is ruling your life. Your fear is not only keeping you waiting, it's keeping the kingdom waiting. It's keeping all those who are supposed to come behind you and learn from you from what they are supposed to receive from the kingdom of heaven. You cannot let fear be the constant narrative in your mind, because the more you feed into it, the louder it gets, the stronger it gets, to the point where you can barely hear God. And you'll start thinking that fear is the actual voice of God and fear is providing you covering when it's not. Fear is simply an amazingly effective camouflage for the word of God. You've got to do it in fear. You've got to move, even though fear might be a part of the scenario. It might play in the background, but it can't be the main voice. You have to move through it. You have to move despite it, because what is on the other side of your fear or your comfort is your actual purpose. And what God has for you is promise. There is no way God is going to just let you fail without any plan. So we're coming up on my last point, because like I said, I was going to try to make these more succinct. I don't know if they actually are until I start the editing process, and if they're not, apologies. Also, you're welcome. The waiting season is a place of unlimited possibility. There is no actual wait in waiting season. You are always in purpose. When I was married, I thought that I would have the ability to go out and do more and be more of all of those things I wanted to be and wanted to do, because now I had a partner to sort of fall back on. What I realized was not only was that not the case, there was someone else I had to think about in all of those big decisions, but I also realized that I always had someone to fall back on. I always had what I needed. I didn't need the partner to make who I was supposed to be and what I was supposed to step into come to life. Interestingly enough, God still used our relationship to highlight that for me, because I obviously was hard-headed and I needed the lesson. But it was so clear once I stepped back into this singleness that I had the potential to maximize every season that I was in without waiting for anyone else. Maximizing your season means taking the time to learn what it was that you've always wanted to learn, taking the time to pour into yourself in the most selfish way that you can, taking the time to get the tools necessary to be available for the next season without missing out on the beauty of where you are today. I know there's fear that if we grow too much, if we do too much, if we accomplish too much, if we acquire too much, then where is there space for your partner? Again, I would have you challenge your vision. There are things that we can be already running and doing and come together to expand, to explode in, and make even bigger and brighter and better. We should be, as Sarah Jakes Roberts said on that podcast that I listened to, creating environments where our partners can flourish. Our lives, our identity aren't just tied to who we partner with. Our lives, our identities are tied to what God has for us to do, through us to do. When I think about all that time I spent waiting and not moving, waiting and not learning, waiting and not growing, it feels like wasted time. You should be maximizing every experience that you can while you're there. The one thing that we are not promised is an abundance of time. We're promised due time. So work in the now. Maximize the now. All right, y'all. That's all I have for today. I am in a no waiting season. I have plenty of things that I want to do, but I am focused on the right now, the step by step that God has specifically laid out for me. And I'm going to be in this place until He gives me new direction. I encourage you to step out of your waiting season and into whatever it is that God has called you to now. I love you. I hope you have the most amazing day. Have a happy Valentine's Day. Bye, y'all.